The universe trembled as the galactic tyrant Zothkar fled in terror, the day humanity proved its might by caging the power of a star. In 2257, Dr. Patrick Brown and his team activated the Dyson sphere, forever changing the course of galactic history. This unprecedented achievement sent ripples through the cosmos, alerting every civilization that a new power had risen, one capable of unimaginable feats of science and engineering. Zothkar, the merciless conqueror who had ground entire species beneath his boot, knew his reign was over the moment humans tamed the fury of their sun. After millennia of unchallenged dominion, the tyrant abandoned his throne and vanished without a trace. Countless worlds erupted in celebration, finally free from the yoke of oppression. But with Zothkar's iron grip shattered, his empire collapsed into chaos. Former generals turned warlords carved bloody paths through the stars, each vying to claim the vacant throne. In the midst of this upheaval, a glimmer of hope emerged. Corvus, a psychic freedom fighter from Beta Z, sought an alliance with Patrick Brown. Only together could they unravel the mystery of Zothkar's disappearance and forge a new era of peace from the ashes of tyranny. As anarchy consumed the galaxy, the unlikely duo raced to uncover the secrets of the past. An ancient prophecy from the extinct Al-Kresh archives foretold humanity's rise and the tyrant's doom at the hands of those who caged a star. With each revelation, the true scope of their struggle became clear. This was more than a hunt for a fallen despot. This was a battle for the very soul of the universe, with humanity ascending to decide the fate of all. Patrick Brown strode through the winding corridors of the secure underground facility, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Corvus followed close behind, his vibrant purple eyes darting warily as they passed armed guards and sealed blast doors. The weight of their mission hung heavy in the air. As they entered the Dyson Sphere Control Center, a cacophony of urgent voices assaulted their ears. Scientists and military personnel huddled around holographic displays, their faces painted in the eerie blue glow. Admiral Graves, a grizzled veteran with a jagged scar bisecting his right cheek, scowled as Patrick and Corvus approached. "Dr. Brown, I hope you have a damn good reason for bringing this alien into our most secure facility," Graves growled, his hand resting on the grip of his sidearm. General Riggs stepped forward, her svelte figure a stark contrast to Graves's bulk. "Stand down, Admiral. I've vetted Corvus personally. His intel on Zothkar is invaluable." Patrick nodded grimly. "We don't have time for distrust. The galaxy is on the brink of all-out war. Corvus and I need access to the Dyson Sphere's energy signature logs. It may be our only chance to track Zothkar before his daughter Vendra consolidates power." Graves's scowl deepened, but he reluctantly waved them through. As Patrick and Corvus pored over the data, an emergency transmission burst to life on the main view screen. The regal visage of Grand Counselor Zara, resplendent in shimmering robes, filled the screen. "People of Earth, I come to you in humanity's greatest hour of triumph, in our galaxy's darkest time of need." Zara's melodic voice was heavy with urgency. "In Zothkar's absence, his Imperium has fractured. His daughter Vendra leads the most fanatical faction, determined to claim her father's throne at any cost. Billions of lives hang in the balance. We implore you, help us stem the tide of chaos before it consumes us all." The room erupted into a frenzy of shouted arguments and heated debates. Some called for Earth to fortify its defenses, to hoard the Dyson Sphere's power for themselves. Others demanded they share the technology freely, a gesture of goodwill to forge alliances in the coming storm. Through it all, Patrick watched Corvus, saw the conflict etched in the lines of his face. He pulled the alien aside, his voice low and intense. "Corvus, I know your people have suffered under Zothkar's boot for generations, but this is our chance to break the cycle. If we don't act now, Vendra will just become the new tyrant, with a different face but the same cruelty. We have to find Zothkar, uncover his secrets before she can consolidate her power." Corvus hesitated, his eyes haunted by the weight of his people's pain. But slowly determination hardened in his gaze. "You're right, Patrick. Overthrowing one despot only to install another is madness. We have to end this, once and for all." General Riggs stepped forward, her voice cutting through the din. Dr. Brown, Corvus, if you're set on this course, I have something that may help. Come with me. She led them to a hidden hangar bay, where a sleek, angular ship lay in waiting. Its matte black hull seemed to drink in the light, betraying no reflection. This is the Phantom, our latest stealth tech. Off the books. It should get you past most sensor nets undetected. Admiral Graves emerged from the shadows, his face an unreadable mask. I'm assigning Sergeant Kai to accompany you. Consider him your official, unofficial backup. A lithe figure detached from the darkness, his movements fluid and precise. Kai inclined his head, obsidian eyes inscrutable. We'll find the Tyrant, one way or another. Patrick and Corvus boarded the Phantom, the weight of the galactic realm's future bearing down on them. As the hangar doors parted and the inky void beckoned, Patrick input coordinates decrypted from the Dyson sphere's logs, the last known location of Zothkar's flagship. The Phantom's engines thrummed to life, a low vibration that built to a scream. In a flash of pseudo-motion, the ship leapt into the stars, vanishing into the writhing tapestry of subspace. The hunt was on. The Phantom sliced through subspace, its sleek form barely a whisper against the cosmic tapestry. Inside the cockpit, Patrick's fingers danced across holographic displays, fine-tuning their approach vector. Corvus sat rigid in the co-pilot's seat, his purple eyes fixed on the swirling void beyond. A sudden burst of static shattered the tense silence. Patrick's hand flew to the comms panel, ready to cut transmission, when a garbled voice cut through. Repeat, this is the Archivist. I have information on Zothkar's whereabouts. Seek me in the Shadow Zone if you want the truth. The message looped twice before fading into crackling white noise. Patrick's brow furrowed as he turned to Corvus. It could be a trap. Corvus leaned forward, his face illuminated by the pulsing console lights. Or it could be our only lead. The Archivist is a legend in underground circles. If anyone knows where Zothkar's hiding, it's them. From the shadows of the rear compartment, Sergeant Kai's voice cut in, low and measured. We don't have the luxury of caution. Every moment we hesitate, Vendra grows stronger. Patrick nodded grimly and punched in the new coordinates. The Phantom shuddered as it changed course, plunging deeper into the lawless fringes of known space. Hours later, they docked with a derelict station, its hull pockmarked with micrometeor impacts and scorch marks from ancient battles. They moved through twisting corridors thick with stale air and the acrid tang of decaying circuitry. In a cavernous chamber lined with data crystals and ancient tomes, they found her, the Archivist. Lyra, a female Zytherian, her iridescent scales shimmering in the dim light, her multifaceted eyes fixed on the trio as she spoke, her voice a melodic hum. You seek the Tyrant, but to find him, you must first understand what he seeks. She gestured, and a hologram flickered to life, a strange device of interlocking rings and pulsing energy conduits. The Nullifier, an ancient weapon with the power to negate any energy source, even your Dyson sphere. Patrick's blood ran cold. Zothkar's after this? Lyra nodded solemnly. He came to me, desperate for information. I can help you find him, but you must swear to destroy the Nullifier once it's secure. In the wrong hands, it could plunge the galaxy into a new dark age. Before they could respond, alarms blared. Kai's voice cut through the cacophony. We've got company. Vendra's forces incoming. The station rocked as the first volley hit. Patrick and Corvus scrambled for cover as Kai returned fire, his precision shots dropping the first wave of Vendra's troops. Lyra moved with surprising agility, weaving between data stacks as she gathered critical information. A stray blast caught her in the side. She stumbled, violet blood seeping from the wound. With trembling hands, she pressed a data chip into Patrick's palm. The coordinates, Zothkar's research facility, go. They fought their way back to the Phantom, Lyra's limp form cradled in Corvus's arms. As they lifted off, Patrick saw the station erupt in flames, erasing millennia of knowledge in an instant. Back on Earth, the mood was grim as General Riggs analyzed the chip's contents. Erebus, she announced, her face tight. The facility's on Zothkar's prison planet. Patrick stepped forward. I'll go. We need someone who can understand the Nullifier tech. Corvus's eyes flashed. I'm coming too. Zothkar will answer for what he's done. Kai simply nodded, his obsidian eyes revealing nothing. As the Phantom approached Erebus, cloaked in stealth fields, the tension in the cockpit was palpable. Patrick's knuckles were white on the controls. We find the nullifier research and get out. That's the mission. Corvus bristled. And leave all those prisoners to rot? We can't just... Enough, Kai interrupted, his voice sharp. Personal agendas get people killed. Stay focused. They slipped into the prison complex during a guard rotation, using stolen credentials to access the lower levels. The stench of suffering permeated the air, screams echoing from distant cell blocks. In a restricted lab, they found the horrific truth. Prisoners subjected to cruel experiments, their minds and bodies warped in attempts to artificially induce psychic abilities. The central research lab was a scene of controlled chaos, smashed equipment, scattered data pads, and the lingering scent of ozone. Patrick rifled through the debris, his face pale. Zothkar's been here, recently, but look. He held up a partial schematic, its design hauntingly familiar. This isn't just similar to Dyson sphere tech. It's identical to some of the core components. Corvus's eyes widened. You mean... The hiss of a pressure door interrupted them. Vendra strode in, flanked by heavily armed guards, her eyes gleaming with malice. Well, well, she purred, raising a crackling energy weapon. It seems we have some uninvited guests. Patrick, Corvus, and Kai exchanged grim looks. They were outnumbered, cornered, with the weight of a terrifying revelation pressing down on them. And somewhere out there, Zothkar drew ever closer to completing the nullifier, a weapon that could plunge the entire galaxy into darkness. Chaos. The world exploded into motion. Kai's hand blurred, hurling a flashbang grenade. In the moment of blinding confusion, Patrick dove for cover behind an overturned console, while Corvus launched himself at the nearest guard. Vendra's energy weapon discharged, scorching the air where Patrick's head had been a heartbeat before. He felt the heat singe his hair as he scrambled to retrieve a fallen blaster. Corvus! Left! Kai barked, his own weapon spitting precise bursts of fire. The alien spun, narrowly avoiding a guard's vibroblade. His fist connected with a sickening crunch, and the attacker crumpled. Patrick's fingers closed around the blaster. He popped up, squeezing off 2 quick shots that forced Vendra to dive for cover. We need an exit, he shouted over the din of battle. Kai's eyes darted around the lab, assessing. Ventilation shaft, northwest corner, move! They fought their way across the room, Kai providing covering fire as Patrick and Corvus pried open the grate. The acrid smell of ozone filled the air as energy weapons discharged all around them. Go, Kai ordered, tossing a smoke grenade to obscure their escape. They crawled through the cramped shaft, the sounds of pursuit growing distant. After what felt like hours of twists and turns, they emerged onto a maintenance catwalk high above the prison's landing bay. There's the Phantom, Patrick whispered, pointing to their sleek ship, but it's crawling with guards. Corvus's eyes narrowed. I have an idea, follow my lead. What followed was a mad dash across catwalks and through service tunnels. Alarms blared as they sprinted the final stretch, diving into the Phantom's open hatch amid a hail of blaster fire. Patrick threw himself into the pilot's seat, his hands flying across the controls. The ship lurched skyward, shields absorbing the brunt of the facility's defensive fire. Hang on, he shouted as they punched through the atmosphere. The inky void of space enveloped them, but there was no time for relief. A massive Imperium battlecruiser loomed ahead, its weapons primed. Evasive maneuvers, Kai ordered, strapping himself in. Patrick's eyebrows furrowed as he pushed the Phantom to its limits, weaving through a storm of energy bolts. A jolt rocked the ship as a glancing blow struck their port side. Activating stealth systems, Corvus announced, his fingers dancing across the tactical console. The Phantom shimmered, becoming nearly invisible against the star-studded backdrop. Patrick held his breath, guiding them into the shadow of a nearby moon. Long, tense minutes passed before Kai finally spoke. I think we're clear, for now. Patrick sagged in his seat, the adrenaline rush fading. We need to contact Earth. Warn them about... His words died as the long-range communications panel flickered to life. Admiral Graves' grim face filled the screen, his voice distorted by static. Massive Imperium fleet, Earth under siege, cut off from colonies. The transmission dissolved into white noise. Patrick's blood ran cold as the implication sank in. "We're on our own," Corvus said softly. Kai's obsidian eyes gleamed in the dim light of the cockpit. "Not entirely. We have this." He held up the schematic fragment they'd recovered from the lab. Patrick studied it, his brow furrowing. "It's not much to go on, but it's a start. We need to find Zothkar and the Nullifier before Vendra can consolidate her power." "But where do we even begin?" Corvus asked. Patrick's mind raced, piecing together fragments of information. "The schematic. It's not just similar to Dyson sphere tech. It's identical to some core components. There has to be a connection." He input a series of calculations, cross-referencing known Dyson sphere energy signatures with uncharted regions of space. A single point began to pulse on the star map. "There," Patrick said, his voice barely above a whisper. "An uncharted outer colony. If I'm right, it might belong to the Founders." Corvus leaned forward, his purple eyes wide. "The Founders? But they're just a myth, a bedtime story told to frighten children." Kai shook his head. "No myth. I've seen evidence of their technology. If anyone could create something like the Nullifier, it would be them." Patrick's hands hovered over the navigation controls. "It's our only lead. We have to take the chance." With a shared nod of willpower, they set course for the mysterious colony. As the Phantom slipped into pseudo-motion, Patrick couldn't shake the feeling that they were hurtling towards something far beyond their understanding, a confrontation that would decide the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. The ship emerged from subspace near a desolate, rust-colored planet. Scans revealed the remains of an abandoned outpost on the surface. As they began their descent, none of them could have predicted the ancient guardian that lay dormant below, or the earth-shattering revelations that awaited them in its databanks. The rust-colored planet loomed before them, its surface a patchwork of craters and abandoned structures. As the Phantom descended through the thin atmosphere, Patrick's eyes darted across the sensor readouts. "I'm picking up a faint signal," he announced, adjusting their course. "It's coming from that ridge to the north." The ship touched down on a desolate plain, kicking up swirls of red dust. Patrick, Corvus, and Kai emerged, their environmental suits sealed against the harsh atmosphere. They moved cautiously towards the source of the signal, scanning for any signs of life or active defenses. At the base of a towering cliff face, they discovered a hidden entrance. Ancient glyphs adorned the weathered stone, pulsing with a faint blue light as they approached. "Founder technology," Kai murmured, his hand hovering over the symbols. "I've seen similar markings before." With a grinding of long-dormant mechanisms, the entrance slid open. The trio exchanged glances before stepping into the darkness beyond. The passageway led them deep underground, opening into a vast chamber filled with rows upon rows of data crystals. At its center stood a holographic interface, dormant for countless millennia. Patrick approached the console, his fingers dancing across its surface. The air hummed with energy as the system awakened, projecting a star map of breathtaking complexity. "It's a beacon," he breathed, eyes wide with wonder, pointing to Akasha. Corvus leaned in, studying the coordinates. The mythical Founder archive world. Before Patrick could respond, a klaxon blared. The chamber trembled as hidden defense systems activated. "We've triggered something," Kai shouted over the din. "We need to move." They sprinted back to the Phantom, energy bolts sizzling past them as automated turrets emerged from the planet's surface. Patrick threw himself into the pilot's seat, hands flying across the controls. The ship rocketed skyward, weaving through a hail of defensive fire. As they broke atmosphere, Patrick punched in the coordinates for Akasha. "Strap in," he warned. "This might get rough." The Phantom shuddered as it entered pseudo-motion, hurtling towards their destination. Hours stretched into days as they traversed the vast distances between systems. Finally, they emerged above Akasha, a shimmering jewel of a world, its surface a latticework of impossibly advanced structures. But they had no time to marvel at its beauty. "Multiple contacts," Kai reported, his voice tense. "Founder defense grid activating." Patrick's brow furrowed in concentration as he guided the Phantom through a maze of energy barriers and automated interceptors. Corvus worked furiously at the tactical station, using every trick in their arsenal to stay one step ahead of the planet's formidable defenses. With a final, desperate maneuver, they slipped through a gap in the grid, plummeting towards the surface. The Phantom touched down hard on a raised platform, its hull groaning from the strain. As they disembarked, weapons at the ready, a figure emerged from a nearby structure. Tall and lithe, with skin that shimmered like starlight, she regarded them with ancient eyes. "I am Selena," she intoned, her voice resonating with power. "You have breached our sanctum, humans. Explain yourselves." Patrick stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We've come seeking knowledge," he began, "to prevent a catastrophe that threatens not just our world, but the entire galaxy." Selena's eyes narrowed, studying him intently. After a long moment, she spoke again. "Your mind, it intrigues me. Perhaps there is more to your kind than we first believed." She gestured for them to follow, leading them into the heart of the Founder Archive, a repository of knowledge beyond their wildest imaginations. As they walked, Patrick explained their mission, the threat posed by Zothkar, and the desperate race to secure the Bifrost technology. Selena's expression grew grave as she listened. "We severed ties with Zothkar long ago, when we learned of his true ambitions. But perhaps we were short-sighted in our isolation." She led them to a central chamber, its walls lined with pulsing data streams. "The research you seek is here, but know this, its power is beyond measure. In the wrong hands, it could bring about the very destruction you seek to prevent." Patrick nodded solemnly. "We understand the risks, but we have no choice." As Selena began the process of transferring the Bifrost data, alarms blared throughout the complex. Kai's comm unit crackled to life, filled with the sounds of battle. "Vendra's forces," he growled. "They must have followed us somehow." Corvus unholstered his weapon, eyes blazing. "Then let's give them a proper welcoming committee." The chamber shook as explosions rocked the surface above. Patrick turned to Selena, his expression determined. "We'll hold them off. Just get that data transferred." As they raced to defend the archive, Patrick couldn't shake the feeling that this battle would change the course of the war, and perhaps the fate of humanity and all alien species itself. As they walked, Patrick explained their mission, the threat posed by Zothkar, and the desperate race to secure the Bifrost technology. Selena's expression grew grave as she listened. "We severed ties with Zothkar long ago, when we learned of his true ambitions. But perhaps we were short-sighted in our isolation." She led them to a central chamber, its walls lined with pulsing data streams. "The research you seek is here, but know this, its power is beyond measure. In the wrong hands, it could bring about the very destruction you seek to prevent." Patrick nodded solemnly. "We understand the risks, but we have no choice." As Selena began the process of transferring the Bifrost data, alarms blared throughout the complex. Kai's comm unit crackled to life, filled with the sounds of battle. "Vendra's forces," he growled. "They must have followed us somehow." Corvus unholstered his weapon, eyes blazing. "Then let's give them a proper welcoming committee." The chamber shook as explosions rocked the surface above. Patrick turned to Selena, his expression determined. "We'll hold them off. Just get that data transferred." The trio raced through the archive's winding corridors, the sounds of combat growing louder with each step. They emerged onto a raised platform overlooking a sprawling courtyard, now a battlefield swarming with Imperium troops. "Corvus, take the high ground," Kai barked, gesturing to a nearby tower. "Patrick, with me. We'll funnel them through the main entrance." For hours, they held their position against wave after wave of attackers. Patrick's fingers ached from the constant barrage of energy bolts he unleashed, while Kai moved like a blur, his vibroblade cutting through armor as if it were paper. Corvus rained death from above, each shot finding its mark with deadly precision. But as the battle wore on, his face twisted with barely held back rage. "We should push forward," he shouted. "Take the fight to Vendra herself." "Negative," Kai responded, ducking behind a pillar as return fire scorched the air around him. "We hold this position until Selena completes the transfer." The conflict reached a fever pitch as Vendra's elite guard breached the inner sanctum. Patrick found himself face to face with a towering brute, its cybernetic enhancements pulsing with malevolent energy. He dove and rolled, narrowly avoiding a blow that shattered the floor where he'd stood. His blaster whined, depleted. With no time to reload, Patrick snatched up a fallen guard's vibroblade, its unfamiliar weight awkward in his hand. The cyborg lunged again, but this time Patrick was ready. He sidestepped the attack, bringing the vibroblade up in a desperate arc. The creature's head separated from its body in a spray of hydraulic fluid and sparks. As the last of Vendra's forces fell, an eerie silence descended upon the archive. Selena emerged from the central chamber, her eyes shimmering with an otherworldly light. "It is done," she intoned. "The Bifrost data is yours." Patrick exhaled, the adrenaline slowly fading from his system. But as he turned to his companions, he saw Corvus's face contorted with terrifying fury. "We had her," the Betazoid snarled. "Vendra was within our grasp, and we let her slip away." Patrick stepped forward, his voice low and urgent. "Our mission was to secure the data, not pursue personal vendettas. We need to focus on finding Zothkar and the Nullifier before—" Corvus's fist connected with Patrick's jaw, sending him stumbling backward. "You humans and your misguided idealism. Don't you see? This is our chance to strike back, to make them pay for everything they've done." Kai interposed himself between the two, his obsidian eyes flashing dangerously. "Enough! Both of you, stand down, now!" The tension crackled in the air as Patrick and Corvus glared at each other, neither willing to back down. Kai's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "We're all exhausted and on edge, but we cannot afford to turn on each other. Not now. Remember why we're here, to prevent further devastation, not to fuel it." Patrick rubbed his jaw, the anger slowly draining from his features. Corvus's shoulders slumped, though his eyes still burned with barely suppressed rage. "Fine," the Betazoid spat, "but this isn't over." As they made their way back to the Phantom, Patrick's mind raced. The Bifrost data offered a way to track Zothkar's movements, but using it risked revealing their own location. They needed a new strategy, one that would allow them to gather vital intelligence without exposing themselves. An idea began to form, dangerous and audacious. Patrick turned to his companions, his expression grim. "I have a plan," he said, "but you're not going to like it." "I have a plan," Patrick said, "but you're not going to like it." Kai and Corvus leaned in as Patrick outlined his risky strategy. Before he could finish, a piercing alarm blared through the Phantom's comm system. "Incoming transmission," Kai announced, activating the holographic display. Admiral Graves's stern visage materialized before them. "We've received your distress signal. Hold position. Help is on the way." Hours later, as the Phantom limped through uncharted space, a sleek carrier ship materialized alongside them. The Archimedes, emblazoned on its hull, dwarfed their battered vessel. Commander Nash, his face weathered by decades of conflict, greeted them in the docking bay. "Welcome aboard. We need to move quickly." Patrick stumbled, his legs giving out beneath him. Kai caught him, noticing the sheen of sweat on his friend's pale face. "Medbay, now," Nash ordered, gesturing to his team. As Patrick and Kai were rushed to treatment, Corvus bristled at the newcomers. "Who authorized this?" Nash's intense look met the Betazoids. "Project Archimedes. We're here to finish what you started." In the medbay, Patrick drifted in and out of consciousness as advanced medical tech pulsed around him. Flashes of alien fauna, razor-sharp claws, and desperate battles in the wilderness haunted his fevered mind. When he finally stabilized, Patrick found himself surrounded by Nash and his team. He recounted their harrowing ordeal, concluding with the intercepted coordinates. "It's our best lead on Zothkar's location," Patrick insisted. The Archimedes science officer, Dr. Reaver, manipulated a holographic display. The subspace distortions in that region, they're unlike anything we've seen before. Nash studied the data, his expression grim. Plot a course, we're going in. As they neared the anomaly, the ship's systems flickered and died. Panic rippled through the crew. It's the event horizon, Dr. Reaver shouted. We can't penetrate it conventionally. Nash's eyes narrowed. Then we do it unconventionally. Prep the quantum entanglement transporters. Patrick watched in awe as the Archimedes team donned sleek combat suits, each emitting a soft blue glow. Dyson Sphere Tech, Nash explained, tossing him a spare suit. Don't ask how we got it. Moments later, they materialized inside the anomaly. Patrick gasped, his mind struggling to process the impossible vista before him. A vast construction site sprawled across a pocket dimension, teeming with activity. Alien ships of terrifying design swarmed around a colossal ring structure at its center. The outer gate, Dr. Reaver whispered. It's real. Nash's voice crackled through their comms. Stay low. We need to access their data networks. They crept through the shadows of gargantuan shipyards, planting tachyon disruptors at key junctions. Patrick's heart raced as they neared a heavily guarded laboratory complex. Suddenly, alarms blared. Obsidian-armored guards poured from every direction, their weapons humming with lethal energy. Go! Nash roared, laying down covering fire. They fought their way through corridors of alien metal, each step bringing them closer to the heart of Zothkar's operation. Patrick's stolen data crystal interfaced with an alien terminal, flooding their HUDs with encrypted information. We've got what we need, Patrick shouted. Initiate emergency extraction. As they raced back to the extraction point, the pocket dimension shuddered around them. Cracks spiderwebbed across the virtual sky. The tachyon disruptors, Dr. Reaver reported, they're destabilizing the wormhole. They materialized back aboard the Archimedes, relief washing over them. But before they could celebrate, an impenetrable energy field enveloped the ship. Zothkar's face appeared on every screen, his eyes burning with malevolent triumph. Fools, he sneered. You've played right into my hands. The Tyrant gestured to a monstrous device behind him, the nullifier, its core pulsing with otherworldly power. Behold, Zothkar proclaimed, the instrument of humanity's erasure, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Patrick's mind raced, searching desperately for a way out of their impossible predicament. Patrick's blood ran cold as Zothkar's face loomed on every screen, his eyes gleaming with malevolent triumph. The Tyrant's words echoed through the ship, each syllable dripping with contempt. Behold the instrument of humanity's erasure, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. The impenetrable energy field surrounding the Archimedes pulsed with an otherworldly glow, trapping them in a dimensional prison. Patrick's mind raced, searching for a way out of their impossible situation. Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared as the nullifier's core flared with unstable energy, its experimental fusion with Bifrost technology causing catastrophic power fluctuations. The weapon's destabilizing, Dr. Reaver shouted, her fingers flying across holographic displays. It's going to tear this entire pocket dimension apart. Patrick's eyes widened as an idea struck him. He sprinted to the nearest control panel, pushing aside a startled technician. What are you doing? Nash demanded, gripping the command chair as another tremor rocked the ship. Using their own weapon against them, Patrick replied, his voice taut with concentration. He rerouted power conduits, bypassing safety protocols. If I can channel the nullifier's energy through the wormhole's singularity core... The ship groaned as reality itself began to warp around them. Outside the viewport, cracks spiderwebbed across the fabric of space-time. Now, Patrick yelled, slamming his hand down on the final command. A blinding flash erupted from the nullifier, its energy surging through the artificial wormhole. The pocket dimension convulsed, folding in on itself as a controlled implosion rippled outward. Zothakar's face contorted with rage and disbelief as his lair began to crumble around him. The stasis field trapping the Archimedes flickered and died. All hands, battle stations, Nash barked. Prepare for immediate evacuation. As chaos engulfed them, Patrick caught sight of Zothkar's retreating form on a distant view screen. The Tyrant was fleeing deeper into his collapsing sanctuary. Nash gripped Patrick's shoulder, his eyes blazing with commitment. "We can't let him escape. You and I are going after him." "What about the others?" Patrick asked, glancing at the frantic crew around them. "Kai!" Nash called out. The stoic warrior appeared at his side. "Lead the evacuation. Get everyone off this station and back to our dimension." Kai nodded, his obsidian eyes gleaming. "Understood, Commander." As Kai coordinated the Archimedes escape, Patrick and Nash donned their combat suits once more. They raced through the disintegrating lair, dodging falling debris and pockets of warped space-time. "There!" Patrick shouted, pointing to a massive ring structure looming ahead. Its surface pulsed with ancient glyphs, radiating an aura of impossible age and power. They sprinted across a deteriorating catwalk, leaping the final gap as it crumbled beneath their feet. Nash's enhanced reflexes allowed him to catch Patrick mid-air, hauling him to safety. As they entered the ring's inner sanctum, they found Zothkar hunched over a pulsing control matrix. The Tyrant whirled to face them, his eyes burning with inhuman intensity. "Fools!" he snarled. "You cannot comprehend the power within this precursor relic. With it, I will transcend the very boundaries of existence." Nash raised his weapon, but Zothkar was faster. A wave of energy erupted from his hand, slamming into the two humans with bone-crushing force. They crashed against the far wall, their combat suits barely absorbing the impact. As Patrick struggled to his feet, his vision swimming, he saw Zothkar activating a series of intricate controls. The ring structure hummed to life, its core pulsing with reality-warping energies. "Behold," Zothkar proclaimed, his voice resonating with otherworldly power. "The outer gate awakens. Soon it will bridge the gap between galaxies, and my conquest will know no bounds." Patrick watched in horror as the Tyrant's form seemed to flicker and shift, as if multiple versions of himself were overlapping in the same space. Zothkar's laughter echoed through the chamber, tinged with madness. "You thought me mortal? Fool! I am beyond death itself. This consciousness, this shard of precursor knowledge, grants me true immortality. Even if this body falls, my mind will simply transfer to another." Nash groaned, pushing himself up beside Patrick. "We have to stop him. If that gate opens—" Patrick nodded grimly, understanding the implications. The entire universe hung in the balance. Zothkar's attention snapped back to them, his eyes narrowing. "Enough of this. You will serve a greater purpose." Before they could react, tendrils of energy snaked out from the outer gate, ensnaring Patrick and Nash. They struggled against the otherworldly bonds, but resistance was futile. "You will be the key to my ascension," Zothkar hissed, dragging Patrick toward the pulsing control matrix. "Your human mind, so adept at unlocking the secrets of the cosmos, will activate the final sequence." Patrick's hands trembled as he was forced into contact with the alien controls. The nullifier's core pulsed nearby, its unstable energies feeding into the outer gate's power matrix. As Patrick's fingers danced across the controls, guided by Zothkar's will, he felt the fabric of reality itself begin to tear. Time fractured around them, creating dizzying loops of cause and effect. Through a shimmering portal, he caught glimpses of the Archimedes struggling to evacuate. Temporal distortions threatened to trap them in endless recursions of the same moments. The outer gate's energy levels spiked, threatening to puncture the veil between galaxies. Patrick's mind reeled as he grasped the full scope of what was about to happen. If the gate fully activated, the resulting surge of exotic matter could unravel the very fabric of space-time. As Zothkar's mad laughter filled the chamber, Patrick realized he faced an impossible choice. The fate of the entire universe now rested in his trembling hands. Time seemed to slow as Patrick's mind raced through calculations, each possibility more catastrophic than the last. The outer gate's energy levels continued to climb, threatening to tear reality asunder. "No!" Patrick shouted, his voice barely audible over the deafening hum of the gate. "We can't let this happen." He wrenched his hands free from Zothkar's control, his fingers flying across the alien interface. Nash struggled against his own bonds, his eyes wide with confusion. "Patrick, what are you doing?" Nash yelled. "The only thing we can," Patrick replied, his voice grim. "I'm overloading the gate's matrix. It's the only way to stop this." Zothkar's face contorted with rage. "You fool! You'll destroy everything!" Patrick's fingers danced across the controls, initiating a cascading power surge. The gate's energy levels spiked dangerously, alarms blaring throughout the chamber. "Nash, we need to evacuate, now!" Patrick shouted, breaking free from the weakening energy tendrils. The commander hesitated, his expression torn. "But Zothkar—" "There's no time," Patrick insisted, grabbing Nash's arm. "This whole dimension is about to implode. We have to go." As they sprinted towards the exit, Patrick activated his comms. "Kai, status report!" Kai's voice crackled through, punctuated by static. "Final evacuation underway. We're holding position near the dimensional rift." "Get everyone out," Patrick ordered. "We're right behind you." The chamber shuddered violently, reality fracturing around them. Patrick and Nash dodged temporal rifts, narrowly avoiding being trapped in looping moments of time. Behind them, Zothkar's enraged screams echoed through the collapsing structure. "You cannot stop what I've set in motion. I am beyond death." They burst onto the main platform just as the Archimedes swooped in, its hull crackling with dimensional energies. The ship's airlock opened, Kai's outstretched hand beckoning them aboard. Patrick and Nash leapt, crossing the gulf between certain death and potential salvation. As they tumbled into the airlock, Patrick shouted, "Go! Maximum thrust!" The Archimedes' engines roared to life, propelling them towards the dimensional rift. Behind them, the outer gate pulsed with blinding energy, reality warping around its unstable core. "Brace for impact!" Nash bellowed as they crossed the threshold. A monumental shockwave slammed into the Archimedes, sending it tumbling through normal space. Emergency klaxons blared as the ship's systems struggled to compensate. When they finally stabilized, Patrick rushed to the nearest viewport, where the pocket dimension had once existed. A swirling vortex of hyper-compressed space-time now hung in the void. "My God," Dr. Reaver whispered, her face pale. "You created an artificial singularity." Patrick's shoulders sagged as the weight of his actions crashed down upon him. It was the only way to contain the exotic energies. If that gate had fully activated— Nash gripped Patrick's shoulder, his expression grim. "You made the right call, son, but the consequences—" Around them, the crew worked frantically to assess the damage. Reports flooded in from across the sector. Entire star systems displaced, fleets scattered across vast distances. "Sir," a young ensign called out, her voice trembling. "We're picking up a transmission. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." As the message began to play, an icy dread settled over the bridge. The voice, ancient and implacable, spoke of judgment and consequences beyond their comprehension. Patrick met Nash's eyes, both men understanding the gravity of what they faced. This was no victory. It was merely the opening salvo in a conflict that threatened the very fabric of existence itself. The ancient voice reverberated through the Archimedes bridge, its otherworldly timbre sending shivers down Patrick's spine. As the message played out, holographic displays flickered and warped, reality itself seeming to bend around them. Suddenly, alarms blared as the ship's systems went haywire. Patrick lunged for the nearest control panel, but his fingers passed through insubstantial light. The holographic interface dissolved, reforming into an undulating mass of alien symbols. "We've lost control," Kai shouted, wrestling with unresponsive controls. "Something's overriding our systems." Before anyone could react, the Archimedes lurched violently. Stars streaked past the viewports as the ship hurtled through a series of uncharted wormholes, each jump more jarring than the last. Crew members were thrown to the deck, clinging desperately to whatever they could grasp. When the turbulence finally subsided, an eerie calm settled over the bridge. Patrick pulled himself up, his eyes widening at the sight beyond the viewport. They had emerged within a vast, swirling nebula unlike anything he'd ever seen. Instead of the vibrant colors of stellar nurseries, this cosmic maelstrom pulsed with dark, hungry energies. At the nebula's heart, a massive gravitational singularity devoured all matter and light. Patrick's scientific mind reeled at the impossibility of what he was witnessing, a cosmic maw consuming the very fabric of space-time. "My God," Dr. Reaver whispered, her face ashen. It's draining everything." Before Patrick could respond, the void before them shimmered. Reality rippled and tore, giving birth to an entity beyond human comprehension. It was as if the universe itself had coalesced into a sentient form, vast beyond imagining, yet infinitely dense. A voice, both everywhere and nowhere, filled their minds. "I am the infinitesimal convergence." Patrick clutched his head, overwhelmed by the psychic weight of the entity's presence. Beside him, Nash gritted his teeth, fighting to maintain his composure. "Eons ago, I seeded the precursors," the convergence continued, its words searing themselves into their consciousness. "I gifted them knowledge of higher dimensions, but they grew ambitious, grasping at godhood through the outer gates." Images flooded Patrick's mind, impossible vistas of alien worlds, civilizations rising and falling in the blink of an eye. He saw the precursors in their prime, wielding energies that dwarf stars. Then came their fall, reduced to cosmic ash by the very force that had birthed them. "You have meddled with forces beyond your ken, awakening that which should remain dormant." The convergence's presence intensified, crushing Patrick's will beneath its cosmic weight. He felt himself laid bare before this primordial intelligence, every thought and memory exposed. "Yet I offer you a choice, Patrick Connor, a bargain for your species' survival." The entity's offer unfolded in Patrick's mind with crystalline clarity. He saw humanity's potential future, transcendence, godlike power, the ability to shape reality itself, and he saw it snuffed out, replaced by an eternity of servitude to the convergence's endless hunger. Nash's voice cut through the psychic maelstrom. "We can't accept this. Patrick, we have to fight." But Patrick hesitated, memories of Corvus's death and the devastation they'd unleashed flashing before him. The weight of his decisions, the countless lives lost in their quest, pressed down upon him. "Is this all there is?" Patrick whispered, his voice barely audible. "An endless cycle of oppression and rebellion?" The convergence sensed his doubt, its presence coiling around Patrick's consciousness. "Choose, Patrick Connor. Defy me and watch your species burn, or submit and secure Earth's survival through eternal service." Patrick stood frozen, the fate of humanity balanced on the razor's edge of his decision. As he wrestled with the impossible choice, the void seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the judgment that would echo across eternity.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.